Hello, hello, hey there, it's Josh again, and we are back podcasting from home on Hustle from Home, and I'm dressed from the waist up.
And we're all so grateful. Thank you, Josh. I'm Amy Anderson. I'm the side hustler columnist at Success and the founder of Anderson Content Consulting. Excited to be with you here from my home office, and really looking forward to today's conversation with our wonderful guest and talking about how do we get started with a side hustle, and if you've started one, how do you scale? How can you make some progress right now in today's climate?
Yeah, today we are talking to anybody who's just kind of toying with the idea of going out with a side hustle, and to the current side hustlers who are thinking about making that their full-time thing. So the market shifts that we have all experienced over these past weeks and months have changed the game. And today we want to, help people, answer those burning questions and capitalize on the way that the market, the economy is going right away.
Right, and if you're feeling like, okay, I wonder if this is the right time, and I wonder if if I should even think about this, right? I will say that one of the biggest things we've seen is how many businesses have actually been started during a recession, during a downtime, and that you've got to really allow yourself to stay open-minded to what's possible for you. And in today's episode, we're going to talk a lot about different ways, some tactical tips, some hacks for getting started, some quick tips to get you started quickly too, so that you don't have to spend forever thinking about it.
Yeah, and it's not that the recession shouldn't be of any notice to people. I mean, there are plenty of people scared by the downturn that we've experienced. I know at Success, I get pitched books by authors, and a lot of them, in fact, our cover guy for the May-June issue, Jay Shetty, his book was supposed to be out in May. It got pushed back to September. So a lot of authors are moving their book releases back, but I know one who isn't, and that's Amy Anderson. Amy, you got a new book coming out, don't you?
I do. And actually, the interesting thing is, Josh, I'm self-publishing my book, and I moved my book release date up. I was going to release it later this summer and have a launch and print books and all that fun stuff. And with everything going on right now and the great need that I see out there for people who really want to know, how do I get my expertise and my experience out there so people know that I have something of value to offer? I wanted my book to be available now, so I'm actually giving away my ebook for free. My book is called Your Book is the Answer, and it talks about how to put your experience and expertise into your very own book. It can be short, and as long as it shares with people what it is that you're about and how they can begin to solve the problem that they come to you for. And this book really for me was an answer to a question that I get a lot, which is, how do I get people to read my book and then become my client, right? There was a big gap there. And people wanted to write a book, but they couldn't connect the dots to making money in their business from that book. So in Your Book is the Answer, I provide some really simple steps, and I connect those two dots, turning readers into clients. So I am excited to share that with you. In fact, as Success Podcast Hustle from Home listeners, if you would like your free copy, just head on over to the writebookmastermind.com/book. That's the Write Book Mastermind, which is my book writing program. And I'll give you that free ebook, and you can explore that for yourself and see if maybe now is the right time for you to write a book. There's so many ways to get your name out there. If you're starting your side hustle, if you're scaling, you could write a book, you can start a podcast, you could do a blog, a vlog even. And, today our guest even talks about sharing on social media, some different ideas for really spreading the word.
Yeah, he did, Amy. I'm super excited to introduce Chris Guillebeau. Super excited for your book too, and I think that people are going to love it. I know that we have a lot of listeners who are thinking about writing books themselves. You've been working on it for a while. I got to see a really early copy, and I think it's something that people can really get behind.
Thanks so much, Josh. I'm excited for people to read it, and I'm excited to see how many people we can help.
So another author. Chris Guillebeau is our guest today. He's a New York Times bestseller of The Money Tree, Side Hustle, The Happiness Pursuit, and a lot of other books. Been translated into more than 30 languages. He's had a lifetime of self-employment, and he's might be familiar with his daily podcast, Side Hustle School. It's been downloaded more than 2 million times a month.
Yes, and he is the founder, if you've heard of the World Domination Summit in Portland, Oregon. It's an annual event for cultural creatives. It just attracts people from all over the world. Of course, this year we may see a little postponement, but I think that a lot of people I know have that event actually on their bucket list. And he's a really inspirational guy in the sense that not only does he promote being creative and really following your passion and finding something that you resonate with as your side hustle, he also is so great at keeping it simple. You know, that's been a theme running through several of our episodes, Josh, and I think today he really expands on that. You can keep it simple. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be costly, and you can get started pretty easily.
Absolutely. I am super excited to talk to Chris. Let's get to it. Chris, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Josh. Glad to be here.
So we're so excited you're here today.
I'm excited too.
We're talking all about going to market. It's finally time. Our idea has come to fruition a little bit, and we're ready to push the start button, except there's not exactly a start button. How do we start? When do we start? What's the first big step?
You know, it would be easier if there was a start button, but the thing about going to market is, you know, there are markets all around us. And I think a lot of people feel a little bit intimidated, or they think, oh, I don't know what to do because I'm not a capital E entrepreneur. And my whole work, you know, for 20 years has been with, you know, just regular people who are not internet celebrities. They're not, you know, famous people on Shark Tank or whatever other show. They're just real people who are trying to find a way to create something for themselves. They understand it in these certain uncertain times. They have to build security for themselves because a lot of the things that we have believed to be true about, you know, job security and such in the past are no longer true. So as for, you know, how do we get to market? How do we get started? I think we start by looking around us. And you said something about like once your idea has come to fruition. Well, I think first is like, you know, what is the idea? Where does that idea come from? And hopefully at that point, we have already kind of looked at our skills and tried to find a connection between, you know, something that we're good at and something that other people value. And that to me, like that convergence point is everything, right? So I guess once you get there, you know, then it's just a question of how do I go from idea to offer? You know, like people are walking around on the street, everybody's got an idea. But if you just think about it from being a consumer, we don't buy ideas. You know, there's no idea store. We don't go to like ideas.com. We buy products and services. So I think that the next step is like, how can you go from your idea to making a product or a service? What is this thing? How do I buy it? You know, how much does it cost? You know, why should I buy it? And how do I actually buy it? Just making that really, really concrete. And it doesn't have to be a complicated thing. It doesn't need to be a huge website. Really, really simple, but getting to market as soon as possible.
I think one of the challenging things about this for certain people, especially those maybe in the service industry, are wondering, okay, well, it seems maybe more straightforward if you have an actual product, but what if you're wanting to market your services? How can you get really clear on that in specific?
No, I'm glad you asked that because you know there's a lot of different expressions of things. Like something can be a product and a service, and some people have a product business might want to create a service around teaching people to use their product, and like vice versa and such. So if it's a service, you think through a pretty similar process of what is the thing that I am trying to show people or teach people or do for people. So essentially, we're talking about the knowledge economy for a lot of these kinds of things. You know, you have knowledge about a certain topic. It could be like something you think is super random. You think it's like just the most niche topic, but there's probably other people out there that are interested in the same thing. And I've seen that over and over with my podcast. I've been doing this for 1,200 days in a row. Every day I'm telling a different story of somebody out there who finds a way to capitalize on this. So, you know, what is that knowledge? How can I then, you know, transfer that or impart that? And so if it's a service, it's through a coaching session or a consultation, but the same thing still holds in terms of, you know, how people have to go and sign up for it somewhere. What do they get when they sign up? You know, how do they pay money for it? What do they then get in return? So just again, thinking really, really practically, not, you know, not pie in the sky, nuts and bolts, how I go from this thing that's in my head or whatever I'm trying to do for somebody to that person actually receiving it.
You just mentioned your podcast, and you've done over 1,200 episodes. We listened to one you posted a couple weeks ago on the idea of a side hustle sprint and going to market really fast. Sometimes maybe it's better to just start rather than wait and perfect everything, right?
I think most of the time it's better, actually. I think most of the time it's better because the thing is, your idea is never going to be perfect. First of all, like, just accept that your product or your service is never going to be perfect. And second, even if you're waiting for it to get, close to perfect or whatever, your product is going to get better. Your product or your service is going to get better based on interacting with real people. Essentially, you're going to get feedback that you won't get any other way. And it's just much more empowering for you if you just think about it like as an individual. So I do these tours, at least when I'm able to tour, going to different cities. And I always ask people, like, who here has ever had any kind of side hustle where they've made, any amount of money, even like $100 or something. And so usually about half the people raise their hands. And then I ask, do you remember the first time that you got paid by a stranger? And almost all of those people remember, like, they all remember the first time they got paid from something that's apart from their paycheck, because it feels so good. It feels really empowering. And just to be like, wow, like a stranger online, sent me a PayPal payment for something that I put up on Etsy or whatever it is, and that just gives you the motivation to keep going. That gives you the motivation to be like, okay, I made $100. How can I make $500 or $1,000? And then what can I do to turn this into recurring revenue so that I'm earning $500 a month? And that takes care of my car payment or some other bills or whatever. Like, it's this positive, virtuous cycle. But if you just remain in the planning stage and you never get to the actual action stage, you're just going to be frustrated. So I meet a lot of frustrated people too. And one of the reasons why they're frustrated is they never go from that planning stage to actually putting something out there and seeing what happens.
And I think that procrastination that we all feel around that, going from that leap from planning to action, is really hard. And maybe there's some fear involved in that. What's your experience in terms of why are people putting that off?
Oh, look, I put stuff off all the time. I think we all procrastinate. So just to be real there, like, I don't think this is something that you eventually like arrive at. I guess it's like, the pain of making the change has to be less than the pain of remaining in the situation, or that whole thing, And right now, a lot of people are kind of looking and saying, what do I want to do with my life? And what do I want to do with my life, my career, my vocation? How can I make extra money to be in a better place so that the next time something, unexpected comes along, then I'm not as afraid, essentially. And so in terms of procrastination, I like to think about regret. And so somebody out there who's listening or watching, and they've got this idea that they've had for a while, but they haven't been able to move forward, what I would encourage them to do, something that's been very helpful for me, is ask yourself, okay, a year from now, with whatever else has happened in the world and whatever else has happened in my life, a year from now, if I don't take action on this idea, if I don't actually try it, how am I going to feel? And versus how am I going to feel if I try? And it's not so much even the outcome, like whether it works or not. It's like, if you try, if you actually, take the step of putting it online or sharing it with your friends on a social network or whatever it is, I think almost always you're going to feel better if you actually, made some progress on it. So for me, that's actually been quite helpful. It's just thinking, I've got this idea. If I keep coming back to it, then there must be something to it. And I don't know if it's going to be an amazing idea or not, but I know I'm not going to be happy with myself if I don't actually try it.
I love that idea of looking out in advance on the calendar. And I think Amy and I can identify with this as writers and editors. We're used to deadlines. And in a lot of ways, the deadline is what makes you, where you get the energy to do some of your best work. And so how do you feel about sort of putting self-imposed deadlines on projects like this when when to go ahead and get out there?
Yeah, great question. I too am a fan of deadlines. It's one of the reasons why I work with a traditional publisher, because like there's other people involved in that process. If it was just up to me, whenever I had a book coming out, I'd be like, oh, how about next month? Let's push it back. But the deadline is my friend, just as it is for you, as you said. So yes, creating some kind of artificial deadline is good. And people are motivated in a couple of different ways. So some people, are really motivated to keep that internal commitment to themselves. Some people are like, I told myself that I'm going to do it on this day, therefore I will. Other people benefit more from external, accountability essentially. So for those people, it's like, okay, you can get a friend and you can say, this is going to happen by this date, or you can just start posting about it on your Facebook or wherever it is that you share online. Hey, everybody, 14 days from now, this project is going to be out in the world. Hey, everyone, it's 10 days to go. I'm not ready, but I have to have this done. Oh, two days to go. You're like that kind of thing can be positive. It can be scary, but it can actually help you get over that fear or that hesitation.
I've even seen people use this kind of created external deadline in order to kind of launch something, even sort of gently, like find a blogger who's interested in what you're launching, talk to them, let them know you've got this coming out or you're starting this service, and hey, would you help me and do a guest blog and talk about the fact that that's coming out on that date, and therefore it's not even just your platform, it's someone else's. And then you also are spreading the word while creating that external deadline for yourself. And it could be, of course, as many other people you want to talk to about that as possible, but it could just be one person, and that even that little bit of pressure can really help.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I mean, I always say, like, everybody's an expert at something, first of all. Like when people say there's nothing I know about, I'm like, there really is. Like we can figure it out in a 2-minute conversation. And the second thing people think is, well, I don't know anybody. Like I don't know anybody famous. I don't know that famous blogger where I can post that thing. But I'm like, you have friends on social networks. You have people you went to school with. You have people that you email with. Like if one of those people is not, the ideal customer or the ideal person, they probably know someone who is. Like somewhere within your networks, there's this thing about the strength of weak ties, that through all the different people we're connected to, we can get to the ones that we need essentially. So I think the real hesitation is just, being afraid to ask or being afraid to move forward compared to like a lack of knowledge. I think a lack of knowledge is really easy to kind of overcome. So
let's talk to that person who feels that they have a lack of knowledge. They're the ultimate novice, first timer. What do we really need to get started? Do we need a website? Do we need an email list? Where do we begin? Social media? How do we get going?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, if you start going down this road, it's like there's so many different, do I need to do this? Do I need to do webinar? Do I need a podcast? Do I need like a vlog now? And like, how many social networks am I going to be on, et cetera? It's just a dangerous thing. And I think people need to understand, even full-time entrepreneurs, full-time business owners, they're not keeping up with all that stuff. Like the question sometimes people ask me is like, how do you keep up with everything? And the answer is you don't. Like it's not possible. So you have to choose what you're going to keep up with. So when you say for that person who's just getting started, I like to simplify it as much as possible. Like if you have an idea to create like a publishing brand, for ebooks or something, you've got an idea to like 8 ebooks, just start with one. Okay, one ebook, one topic, one thing, one simple website. I do think a website is helpful, but that can be a one-page website. You can get free websites. You can pay $10 for a website. Not going to be the most amazing website in the world, of course, but that's not the point. You need some way to accept money. But probably just about everybody listening or watching has a PayPal account or a Venmo account. It's in like 180 countries. You can accept money with that. You can put that button on your website. So just thinking through like, what is the bare minimum that I need? Okay, I need to explain my offer. I need somewhere people can read that, and I need a way for them to click, buy now or sign up or whatever it is. And then from there, it's that question of like iterating on that. Okay, what would be helpful? Okay, maybe it would be good for me to have social media presence. Maybe at some point I do want to start a podcast. But I think if you start with the universe of everything that's available to you, then you do get overwhelmed. And by the way, I don't think that's a mistake that only beginners make. I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make. Just because they see what other people are doing and they think, oh, Amy's doing this thing, so I have to do it her way, or Josh, he's got this thing going, so I'm going to follow his path. But what works, for you might not work for someone else. So what is the simplest thing you can do today to get something out there within, 30 days or less?
I love that. And I talk a lot to the people, I help people write books that grow their businesses. And I talk a lot to people in terms of they want to do all the things, right? And sometimes they'll feel like, well, I can't do a book or I can't do a podcast until I've got all these other things done. And we talk about how, if you'll start with one thing that produces some content, right? Maybe it's your blog, maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's a book, maybe it's just your website. and it's a place for people to go, or your social media page, right? Your Instagram.
Yeah.
And by putting content there, then you're building this library of information. You're building a library of stories. You're building a foundation that then you can go back to and dip into and pull for other things. You know, that Instagram post can become a solo podcast. It can become a chapter in your book, whatever it is. But start with one thing and get something out there, because if you don't put it out there, people don't know. And then you don't know what you don't know what they like, right? And one of the things I like that you talk about is putting things out there and then really listening to people and what adds value to them, not just what you want to produce.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you said that. And the other thing about publishing that first post or the first episode or whatever it is you're going to get better in doing that. You know, you're going to get better yourself. And like, if you look at any, you know, online personality, anybody who's been sharing, anybody who's been writing in any format, you know, we tend to look at people that we respect because that work is popular, maybe it's more evolved, et cetera. I always think it's helpful to go back to like the beginning of that person's work. And usually you're going to see, oh, it actually wasn't as good, or there was this big transition, or they were trying to figure themselves out. You know, they were trying to figure out what their message was. And so you often, I think people feel like they need to know everything when they're getting started. That's another reason why people don't start, because they're like, I have to make this critical decision that's going to affect the rest of my life, and whatever I decide to do tomorrow, I'm going to be doing for 10 years. I mean, I really feel like people think this way. And if you can, you know, just kind of gently let them know, actually, you know, it's okay if you do something for a while and that leads you to something different. That's actually how it works for most of us. You're probably not going to be doing the idea that you have right now, you know, 10 years from now, but you might not get to the better idea without going through this series of other ones first. So I'm so glad you said that.
Along those lines, I want to pitch this question to both of you. What are some of the pivots that you've made in your solopreneur journey?
Amy?
Oh, wow. Well, you know, along the lines of figuring out my brand and figuring out what it is I really want to be about, it took me a while. I started actually helping freelancers to have a freelance business, a successful one. So I talked to a lot of freelance writers, friends, colleagues, freelance designers, and they were having a lot of trouble with actually creating a business, right? They were getting some clients and getting some money, but no actual business. So I created my first online course actually to help freelancers, and I enjoyed it, but ultimately I figured out that my audience wasn't right. And so you may go a while and realize like, okay, you know what? I love working with freelancers, but it's bigger than that. You know, I also like helping consultants and coaches and small business owners. And for me, it was more about, let me help you get your message right, and less let me help you with the nitty gritty. But it took me a while to feel that out for myself. So you can go back in the Wayback Machine on the internet and see my old website about helping freelancers, and it'll look totally different than what I'm doing now. But within a few years, you know, I figured it out. And I mean, I made money with the freelance thing too, but it's all about really trusting your people to tell you the truth about what they like and don't like. And sometimes they just tell you the truth of their money, right? They're either buying it or they're not.
Yeah.
And then listening to yourself. What feels right to you? Because a lot of times our instinct is right in terms of the value we have to offer.
So good. I'm so glad what you said about the intuition at the end, because I was going to throw that in, but then you nailed it. That was good. So my answer, so I'll give you like a big picture and then a specific. So big picture for me, like if I look back on like the past 11 years that I've been sharing online, I've started a lot of different projects and a lot of different things, and some have worked and some have not. And one thing that I started to notice a couple of years ago is like, what are the characteristics of each category, you know? And I think that the more I was trying to do something that was, you know, authentically me, that I really what I believed in, I was excited about, and obviously it had market value, like it was still like helpful to other people. It's not just my own like private thing, but still it's like something that I'm really drawn to, that I feel like is a little bit different than what other people are doing. That's where I've had success. And where I have done something because I thought I should do it, because that's what somebody else is doing it. Oh, this is how they're building their online course, so therefore I should do it. You know, then those have been the projects that have been less successful. And so I've tried to pivot much more to, you know, following what I know to be true based on experience, you know, based on intuition, based on my desire to challenge myself. And then the specific example is this new book that I have, the Money Tree. This is a fiction book, so it's a novel that I'm actually trying to teach through. And I've done 6 how-to books before, but you know, this book essentially is like I'm trying to teach people about financial security and financial independence, but through the form of a story. And so I've never done that before. And the reason I did it is because I felt like a lot of people out there who need this message are not going to read a business book. They're not going to read a how-to book. But in this uncertain time, they too need to find a way to embrace this kind of entrepreneurship. So that was a pivot or kind of a creative risk, that I took because I believed in it.
And I've been online and seen how, actually right now, if you're listening, you can go online, and if you need a copy of that book, if you feel like you're in a place right now where you can't buy that book, Chris has actually set up this amazing exchange program where people are donating books, and then you can go and request one. And I love that you're doing that. I think this is the perfect time for that kind of generosity, and also just it's kind of this meta commentary on the book itself, right? It's this wonderful example of how do you add value and then share that wealth and then build something for yourself, truly meaningful.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. So that's kind of a social experiment that we're trying, and we're not sure, how it will all work out and how it will balance out and such, but we're already seeing people engage with it. So they can go to moneytreebook.com if they want to check that out.
Awesome.
So back to our true beginner. Where do they go to find the first customer? Friends, networking? If they're not set up with that email list, if the social channels, are just not built out yet, they don't have much of a following. Sure. Where do we start?
Well, there is no email list fairy. There's no nobody starts with an email list. I mean, I started with an email list of 5 people, that I kind of badgered, to get. So I was like, I'm doing this thing. Will you sign up? And one of them was my grandma. And it's kind of like went from there basically. And so I'm just like writing originally and like asking people to, hey, if you believe in this message, will you kind of share it? And so we're talking a little bit about like blogging and building that kind of personality business. But if it's somebody who has a product here, I think it's a similar process of like, there is somebody who can help you from your existing connections. So I would go in, if you don't have a big social network, you still have something, like I said. So wherever you congregate online, make a post and say like, here's this project that I am starting. I've always really been into the, whatever this topic is, embroidery. And now I'm actually selling my artwork, or I made this thing to show people how to, pursue that craft better. And, will you help me? Will you pass it on to your network if you know somebody like that? And just building that grassroots, I think is, and while you're doing that, you can also be like trying to build a website and maybe listing it for sale on a platform that has more attention, that already has a lot of traffic. So there's different things you can do, but ultimately I think for me, the interest has always been like this organic grassroots strategy, as opposed to like, here's $1,000 that I'm going to spend on, online ads that probably aren't going to work.
So do you think there is a place, I'm sorry, Josh, you want to ask?
Well, I was just going to say that I know a lot of people feel like they're going to have to dump some money into social media or banner ads somewhere. But it's great to hear that it's not necessarily needed at the start.
I think
I was just going to ask if there was
go ahead, Amy. Sorry.
I was just going to ask if there's a place for that down the line, maybe for the person who's not the beginner, right? Someone who's trying to scale.
Yes, and that down the line is the right way to think of it. The time to, people always say like it takes money to make money, but I think if you're spending a lot of money, you're often wasting money on the front end, and that's why I have so many stories of people who started for $100 or less and end up growing that business. The time to invest in your business is when your business is successful, like when your business is profitable, even at a low level, and you can see, there is a connection between if I spend this $1,000, then it's probably going to help me, generate more clients or bring more people into the funnel or whatever it is. But it's not when it's an unproven thing, otherwise, if you don't have something that converts, then you're just buying, visitors that are going to come and go away, and you're going to pay a lot of money to Google or Facebook or whoever, and nothing's going to come of it. So the time to do that is when it's actually, up and running and doing well.
And I think that leads to the idea too of, we were talking about, is it your offer, like the product or service, or is it the community that needs to come first? And the thing is, that if you don't have an offer to sell to this community, well, then you're just sort of out there spinning your wheels on social media. We could post all day, right? But if you don't have anything to sell to anyone, that really does seem to be the place to start. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think it depends on your goal. It depends on what you're trying to do. And some people who are trying to build like a community-oriented thing, which still has a profit element to it. I'm not talking about like a nonprofit. Then I think maybe the initial focus is more on like that, and then adding products later. But not everybody has to do that. I mean, you can just come out with a product. I've got a product. I want to share it. I just did this story on this woman who is doing like digital paintbrushes. With the iPad, they have the iPad pencil and all that. So there's all these artists, and she was making like digital paintbrushes that people can buy online. To use through this software. It's a weird, interesting thing, and she's making like $70,000 a year doing it. She had no community when she started doing this. She just started making that, found a way to offer that through the system. So it really depends on what you're trying to do, what your objective is, and what the product or the service is, I think.
Now, what about if we already are up and running and we're trying that, that person who's trying to boost growth? This is a scary time for that in the current economy. What are some ways to maybe make that happen even despite everything?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a scary time for sure, but it's also a time that presents opportunity. It's a time when people are thinking about a lot of different things, and so many things, like the world is turned upside down, and whenever that happens, there are negative consequences, which we're all aware of. But then there are also some possibilities. All of a sudden you've got millions of people that are working remotely who never did that before. That presents a whole lot of things. I don't think that all these people are going to go back to their corporate jobs in the same way once all this is over. Like a lot of them are like, actually this kind of works like this. So the point there is like, it's a scary time, but at the same time, these are times of opportunity. So for that person who actually has the foresight and has already built something, first of all, good for them. Like they were thinking ahead. I think what they do is, they look and say, okay, what is working? What is working in my business right now, and what is not working? And usually the best answer, I mean, it's like case by case, but usually the best answer is not so much let me fix what isn't working, but let me just try to do more and more of what is working. And if I have 4 products, probably one or 2 of those are selling disproportionately. So what is the next version of that product? What is, we mentioned earlier, what's the service that I can create based off of this product? How can I either reach more customers or sell more to my existing customers? And these are really fun things to ask. And this is like a fun process when you get to that point, because I think it's a lot easier to grow a business, from like the $1,000 a month to the $5,000 a month or 10,000 or whatever, than it is to get to that first 1,000. So once you get there, it's like, all right, there's a lot of stuff we can do because I know that there's a demand for what I'm offering. It's just a question of how do I do it better, essentially.
Now, Amy, I know that we're 5 episodes in, but there's still people who are on the ledge, don't you think, that aren't sure if now's the right time to jump in full time?
Absolutely. And I think that one of the things that Chris just said about how, maybe they may be looking at other people who have already started and thought, well, they've got it easier. This is not the time to take a risk. There are too many people who don't have money to spend, that kind of thing. And I wonder if, I don't know, Chris, I'd like to hear your thoughts on, I wonder if people are assuming too much, right? That maybe people aren't going to invest in something new or try something new or take a class or whatever it is, simply because we are where we are right now. Or maybe is this actually the time when people are inspired to try something new?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot we could say about that. It's like there are some things that people are not willing to invest in, right? Like if your aspiration is to be like a travel agent for cruises, that's really not a great business to be in right now, But if your aspiration is to be like a home office consultant and help people get set up with like their webcam and learn how to, use Zoom and stuff like that, then this is a tremendous time, So, you use that word risk, and what I always encourage people to think about is like, what is the real risk? Because to me, I think the real risk is like entrusting your well-being and your security to somebody else or to some externality or to, market forces or the corporate structure or to the government or whatever. Like that's what really is risky versus, choosing to invest in yourself and saying, what is this thing that I can do to provide better protection for myself and for my family? So that again, like if something like this ever happens again, or it could be something totally different, whatever it is, then I am going to be protected. So I think it's actually a safe choice. It's not so much, my message is never like, hey, go and take a risk. It's more just like for me, I feel like what I'm doing is the safe conservative choice in working for myself. So I think people should really think about what that is for them.
Great point.
You've been doing this a while. You've worked with people and seen a lot of people who are at this very early and crucial stage in their side hustle or solopreneurship venture, full-on company, whatever. What do you love most about what you do, Chris?
Well, that's a really good question. Thank you for asking that. What I love most is I often hear stories from people. I get a lot of emails from my readers and listeners, and I often hear like what they're doing, what they have done, and sometimes there's like some intersection between my work, whether it's the podcast or one of the books, that has like tipped them a little bit or gave them like a some kind of idea, and so they're usually writing to say thank you to me, and I appreciate that. But for me, what I always say to them is like, well, they're the ones who did the work, like they're the ones who actually made it happen, because for every 100 people who read my books, probably 99 of them don't do much with it. Like I wish the odds were better, but a lot of people just kind of don't do stuff. So I'm always encouraged when people actually, take action and follow up on something. And I'm like, yeah, it's great that we had this little moment of like, convergence or intersection there. And so I just want to reach more people that are interested in taking that action.
That's awesome. This has been really inspiring to talk to you about this. And I think that a lot of people will really benefit from your approach to things, in the sense that you really try to keep things simple. You talk about starting small, you talk about starting with very little money. And right now that's the perfect message. So I really encourage people to learn more about you, to visit your site, to get your book, and really look into how can they just start something small, or if they've already started something, how can they make some incremental steps towards growth right now?
Okay. Thank you so much, Amy.
Chris, we greatly appreciate it. We greatly appreciate all of you coming back once again for Hustle from Home. We'll do it again next week. So long, everybody.
Bye, y'all.